Apache Junction Health and Human Services Commission meeting to order. The Pledge of Allegiance. Shall we all stand? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Erickson,
Here.
Commissioner Borey,
Here.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Here.
and Commissioner Kinner.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Approval of agenda. Do we have a motion for the approval of the agenda?
I move that the agenda be accepted as presented.
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Erickson,
Yes.
Commissioner Borey,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Kinner.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Do we have a motion on approval of minutes?
I'll move that the meeting minutes of July 23rd, 2020 be approved.
Do we have a second? Second. Okay, roll call?
Commissioner Kinner,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Borey,
Yes.
Commissioner Erickson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. And public hearing, we do not have any public hearings this evening. And I think we have no old business. For the new business, we have the election of the chair and vice chair. Jennifer, can you start the discussion?
Sure. So when the new members are appointed to boards and commissions each year, the chair and vice chair are nominated. If this board wishes to wait until Siri is present to do the nominations, you can continue this item to a date and time certain.
Okay.
And I need to double check, but I believe the code says something about the chair cannot be the chair again, Joel? I'll double check that,
Mm-hmm.
but if you'd like to make a motion and continue it to December. December 17th at 6 p.m., we can continue the item.
Okay.
That's up to
And
your discretion.
Can I make the motion?
Mhm.
Okay. I would like to move that we put the election of chair and vice chair on hold until December 17th at 6 p.m., when hopefully we'll have a full commission.
And I'll second that.
Okay.
Roll.
Commissioner Erickson, Commissioner Borey,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Kinner.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, may I be recognized?
Oh, yes.
As to number 5, actually number 4, I think that's going to take longer than number 5, so I would suggest you just swap the order.
Okay.
And maybe number 6 too, so I go last, but that's up to you.
Mhm.
And I don't want you to feel rushed at all, but I think I might, this could take me 30 to 40 minutes, or 3 hours if you want. It's up to you. But it's just a suggestion, and you don't need a motion for it if you all agree on it.
Okay, let's move on to number 5. And Jennifer, if you could start the discussion, it is regarding the possible amendments to the code, Volume 1, Chapter 2.
Sure. So the previous board and our nonprofit organizations in the community have an issue with our city code as far as what is considered an audited report. So the previous boards, and it's been a discussion for about 2 years, is that we review our city code and that this board would make a recommendation to the council on how you wanted to proceed with the word audit. Tonight, I presented you with a couple of handouts. One is a review versus audit, what you need to know. The other one starts off with a financial audit is an objective examination and evaluation of the financial statements of an organization to make sure that the financial records are a fair and accurate representation of the transactions they claim to represent. And a CPA, which we always thought a CPA audit report is very expensive for some of our smaller nonprofits, and it just isn't feasible for them to conduct a CPA audited report. So in discussions with the city attorney, we've talked about what audited means, and if this board wants to make a recommendation to the council of what types of financial records or auditing should be done. Joel, if you can chime in too. I believe we've discussed, a third party, that the third party be so many years' experience in bookkeeping or have some knowledge of financial records, whether you want to put a term on that saying that, if a third party is used, they have to have 3 years, 5 years of this type of education or worked in the field for the last 5 years, and that's what they're doing, that this isn't a part-time job for somebody, say, oh, I'm a bookkeeper. And that is all up for you to review. You can make a recommendation tonight, or you can take this back, read through it, do your own research, and come back in December with maybe another recommendation, because I know that this is quite a discussion and thought process of what you want to allow maybe our smaller nonprofits like the Genesis Project and whatnot, to allow them to apply for the Health and Human Services financial assistance, the financial funds that you then distribute to our nonprofits. In the past couple of years, we've only had the 4, which is the Boys and Girls Club, CAFA, Horizon, and just lost one. Boys and Girls Club, CAFA, Horizon.
Food bank?
The food bank, thank you. It's the holiday season, that should be on the top of my mind. They're very large organizations. They get funding from multiple sources, and they have the money to do a CPA audited report. So whether it be a CPA audited report that you recommend still be done, or if you come up with a different terminology for what audited could mean, that would be your recommendation to council.
Can I ask a question on, some of the organizations are under an umbrella of a larger organization. So are they going to be just allowed to do their own, strictly their organization that's in Apache Junction? Or do they have to have the audit of the whole organization, the whole large organization?
Can you give me an example, Commissioner Bory?
I can answer that.
It's great, Joel.
Madam Chair, may I be recognized?
Yes.
Yes, Commissioner Bory, Jill, can you put up section 2-14-1? And if you look at section B, that is what we're talking about. It's a reporting requirement on a quarterly basis that would assure the city that the contract is being fulfilled. And so that's the kind of thing you're looking for. And I'd say it'd have to be tailored to your contract. So the answer is an umbrella from a larger sister or brother of the company or of the nonprofit. That's not going to work. You need to have something that says, yes, they did the following, and they did it on these dates, and that's how they get paid. So that's what you need, but it's up to you on the level. If you want a review, that's different than an audit. It's something that city staff needs to be assured that the requirements were met. So we're not talking about we're talking about some money, yes. Is it a huge sum of money? In the scheme of things, right now, I think it's $80,000 that you get to allocate, that you're told the council will probably allocate. So is that a huge amount of money? Depends on your perspective. So it's just basically it's a detailed accounting of the expenditure of city funds on basically how it was spent.
Okay,
So that's just to put some perspective in it.
okay, but what I'm thinking of is like, say, Boys and Girls Club. They're under the Phoenix Boys and Girls Club of I don't know if it's Valley of the Sun or what their, title is
They were
now.
merged
Right.
last year.
The two organizations merged. So that's what I'm thinking of, is because some people look at it and say, wow, they have all this money, and they don't. Each club has to raise their own funds. And of course, there are some pass-through things that happen with Boys and Girls Clubs of America and Boys and Girls Clubs of say, the Phoenix organization. So that's what I was speaking to.
The funds that the Apache Junction Boys and Girls Club raises and spends, that's who you give your money to. Well, that's who it's supposed to go to.
Yes. And
the money does not go back to Phoenix for their programs.
Right.
Or their residents. It's allocated for here.
That's who the contract is with.
Correct.
Right.
So
Correct.
you're right. So do they have all that money that say, well, every Boys and Girls Club, they have so much money nationwide?
They don't
Well,
need anything. Yeah.
it's this Eastern Division. That's what it is. And so I don't know what it costs them to do this, $2,500 maybe. Is that a lot of money out of how much you allocate them? Yes. How much is their allocation? I can't remember for Boys and Girls Club.
Usually around 10.
Yeah, so that's a
12.
quarter of the amount just for an audit, just to prove that they're doing their contract. That's a policy decision for you. And if you want to then recommend to council, like the city clerk said, maybe you want to wait till you have a full complement, but that's up to you, so that you have everybody's opinion on it. But that's up to you.
Well, and I'm not sure if Horizon is in that same category where they have a larger organization, and then they're
They
passed.
provide specific services
Or
to
Apache
our
Junction.
resident group only.
Right.
So when we talk about the audited report, that comes in with their January filing when they apply for money. And we used to use the ordinance 659 that broke out everything that you were supposed to supply, which actually made the application. Heather Patel actually organized it and actually made an application, which we are finishing up, and we can put it online later. I don't know if we'll meet the January deadline, but it talks about an audited report. When you submit paperwork asking for money, tell me what you made last year. Tell me where you spent all your money last year. So it was kind of an overall picture of where they spend their money. But when they file their quarterly reports, they're supposed to give us an accounting of where that money was spent. Now, the food bank, they're kind of exempt. They used to, make sure that it was a city resident, and then they would keep track of the numbers that they served. There's an issue with that we cannot track that. It's I believe, federal issue that we are not allowed that information. But usually it was to help the city residents or those within our community. So the quarterly report would say, let's take CAFA, a number of individuals. We served 35 domestic violence victims and provided them with legal services, provided them with housing resources or whatever. They would account for where they spent the money, and there's usually a cost per unit affiliated with that would show us, okay, you spent $2,000, but your monthly or your quarterly allocation is $1,050. And so they would get that $1,050, but they would have to tell us, how many individuals they helped, what were the services that were provided, and what was the unit cost for that service, because services can have different, price units affiliated to them. That's in the quarterly reporting. So what I'm talking about this evening that would allow Genesis to apply and other smaller nonprofits is that January 31st filing on the audited report that they're supposed to submit, which would be the previous year's audit. And so many use QuickBook, and I would think that if a third party could pull together the QuickBook funds and see where their income, their expenditures, their assets, and where they spend their money, that is what we're looking for.
My apologies, I thought you were talking about the quarterly.
Sorry, Joel.
I apologize to the board.
Oh, no, no.
So would that then be considered still an audit or review?
The quarterly or
No, the annual.
the January
The
31st?
January one.
That's where the
If we
board, where the
change-
commission is looking
Sure.
to make some recommendations to
Right.
council. Say, council, we have 5 small nonprofits in the community, to have them do a CPA audited report, it's going to cost them $2,500. They're only getting $5,000. That's half of what we're giving them. We would like to recommend for the smaller nonprofits, maybe with a budget under, I don't know, $500,000, that we recommend doing a review or a third party that is a bookkeeper that has 10 years experience or something along those lines that would not cost them as much as a CPA hourly rate to do an audited report.
See, I think like Boys and Girls Club, their audit is done by,
A large firm.
a large firm, but it's done for the whole organization. And so then, but I'm not sure how it's broken out for, say, the Apache Junction branch. In other words, you get the audit and it shows this big number.
It
Or in
does.
Horizon may be the same, in the same boat as they are. That's, all I was trying to,
Right, some of those reports that come in are very large. They're
Yes,
like 40,
yeah.
50 pages because it covers the entire organization.
right.
But it does account for where they spend their money, what services they provide. It's just that they don't break it out per division
Okay.
or per area. But like I said, if you want to set a dollar limit, say, if your budget's under $500,000 a year, then we'll recommend services. But if your budget is over $1 million, then we expect a full, that's a lot of money that you're dealing with, and it's about the honesty and integrity of where you're spending your money and showing the public where you're spending your money.
Okay.
That's why I say you may just want to discuss this evening, and we can come back with some in December with maybe kind of a menu of options to choose from.
And I would tend to agree. We have 2 new members, and by the way, welcome. We're very happy to have you on the but it would give each of these new members an opportunity to review it, to kind of get up to speed.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll have our 5th member here as well in December. So do we need to make a motion to?
Continue to a date and time certain.
Okay, continue. I move that. And if the rest of the commission is in agreement with that. I think we all would like the extra time to have a full commission be able to have it reviewed and be able to discuss with having the time to review it, so.
Sure. And I can send any documentation that we've got. I can send it electronically to all of you. Just don't hit reply all. And then if you have questions, definitely contact our office because, we have a little bit of more history and background on the issue. And we can supply the information that what are our nonprofits. We can do a reach out and see where their annual budget is and then send that to the board.
Okay. But we won't,
Yeah.
we won't be in time then for the January.
So I've talked with the city attorney about this, and we figured that if the council decides January, February, because you're not giving the next year's budget money out yet, even though the deadline is January 31st, so if Genesis submits an application, we're still going to consider all of those because the money is not being distributed till after July 1, correct, Joel?
Well, if they're going by the
After-
current code, Say the code doesn't get changed because it wasn't in time. I think they have to meet the code as of January 31st.
31st? Okay.
I believe they would still have to do that. So that includes the old requirement. So to get that done quickly is going to be hard, especially if there's 2 more set of meetings in council, but I don't know if they're going to cancel the second set of meetings. So, and actually,
I would say we wouldn't make it because if we change
Well-
code, there's a 30-day
well, but you could do it by
emergency clause.
and then that would take care of it. The emergency clause, that you don't have to have the 30 days. So there is a way to do that. But I don't know, it probably won't be on the 5th, and to rush it on the 19th, there's only one day because there's a holiday right before that. I'd say it'd be pretty unlikely.
Well, and I think the other issue might be too is when do these organizations end their fiscal year, their own fiscal year? So they may not have an audit done on their fiscal year.
It would be the previous years.
Oh, the previous, okay.
Yeah, because you're right. There's the problem of when do they consider their budget? So it's usually the previous year's audited report.
Okay.
So it looks like we would like to get the statement to change it, but the wording would take a little bit too, wouldn't it? Or is it just as simple as changing the word from audit to review?
Depending on what you choose, I've drafted an ordinance which the city attorney still needs to review, and I kind of left some blanks open, and we can, like he said, add an emergency clause, which basically makes it go into effect immediately. And so if we present this to council in December or even January, there would still be the ability for the nonprofits to apply if we do it with an emergency clause. It'll be tight, like Joel said. It'll be very tight.
And the council has 3 new members. They may not like the emergency clause, so keep that in mind too.
Okay, well, I think it looks like we will, unless we want to work it out tonight, we will have to move until the December meeting.
Well, and this is where you could think about if you have ideas, say the nonprofit is under, and this is where we would need to contact our nonprofits and figure out what their annual budget is. That would at least give you a baseline as to what the Genesis runs at versus what Horizon runs at.
Okay.
Well, and
Also
everything,
gives you time to think about, well, I'd rather have someone with 5 years if they're a bookkeeper working in the field in the last 3 years, or I'd rather have, I don't want to say a CPA, but is there anything else other than a bookkeeper and a CPA, Joel? Some sort of third-party auditing that's been doing the work that's not a part-time job kind of thing.
Well, CPA is the Cadillac level.
Yeah,
Bookkeepers, it's a bit lower, so.
yeah.
Okay. And the next meeting in December would be beyond unless we can move our meeting earlier in the month.
Correct. The second council meeting in December is the 15th. The Health and Human Services would meet on the 17th. But again, that still gives you 2 meetings in January to present the item and then have it for action.
Okay.
And it only works if they do emergency clause.
And remember, the council might be canceling that meeting for the second set of meetings in December.
In December,
There's
they
been
may
talk
be.
from the city manager on that.
There may be. But the January meetings were, they'll be holding those. So we'll have a work study session for sure. But the first meeting in January is the 5th, when the new council is sworn in. There is no items for business on that agenda. It's swearing them in and the outgoing council.
well, and I was just going to say too that the budgets are going to be a little different this coming year, probably because of COVID and the way people have had to work in their organizations and their fundraising efforts, and, a lot of things are impacted. So it's going to be a different sort of budget, I would imagine, we'll be
And
getting.
that could be your plea for the emergency clause.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think we will, do we have a motion to move to next month?
Continue the item to
Continue
the
the item.
December 17th agenda.
I'll make that motion that we move the meeting to December the 17th.
Continue the item to the 17th. And a second, please.
Second. Okay, roll.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Kinner? Yes. Commissioner Erickson?
Yes.
Commissioner Bory?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, and the next item is date and selection.
Number 6.
Number 6.
Okay, discussion and possible update on selection of a scheduled Health and Human Service Commission meeting day and time. I think we've been discussing it, and at this point, we'll,
You can continue this item as well if you like. It's just the normal thing that when you have a new board in end of 1st of November is when everyone takes their seats in their new boards or commissions, and usually the chair, vice chair, and setting the meeting schedule for the following year is done. All new board, so we can continue that item to December as well. There is no rush. Currently, this board meets the third Thursday at 6 p.m. If you want to look at your schedules, you have the option of participating by phone. If you would rather do this in the afternoon on a particular day, we just need to know. So you can continue that item as well if you like, so give Siri a chance to chime in as well.
I think that would be wise.
Okay,
So,
we'll need a motion.
do we have a motion to continue the selection of a scheduled, well, I'll go ahead.
You're good.
Can I? Okay. I move that we move the selection of a scheduled Health and Human Service Commission meeting day and time to our next scheduled meeting on December 17th.
And I'll second that.
Okay.
Roll.
Commissioner Kinner?
Yes.
Commissioner Erickson?
Yes.
Commissioner Bory?
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, and City Attorney Joel Stern has, each year you do a presentation to the new board members, correct?
Yes, I do.
And it has been very helpful, and I think our two new commission members would, as well as all of us, would find it useful. So we'll give the floor to you.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Well, let's start with the code of conduct. A lot of this is common sense. The council went through this. This used to be 12 pages long. By the time council passed it, it went down to 4. So I went to different cities, looked at different cities and towns, and so they pretty much wordsmithed most of this. So this is their creation. And I'm not going to read every single thing here. I'm going to go through the highlights. You act in the public interest always. Don't have any personal agenda when you do this. When you do your duties as a commission member, comply with the law. That's pretty easy. The concept is, at least. Professional conduct, this one basically says just don't have any personal bias, Don't be, don't have impartiality that might be reasonably questioned. If there's personal knowledge, that could be a problem if you have personal knowledge of something that none of the other members have. And this is taken from the attorney oath, actually, from the state bar. And the question is whether their impartiality might be questioned from the perspective of a reasonable person. Public meetings and due process, those are pretty common sense, but the council felt it had to be put into this document, which does govern board and commission members. There's due process involved. Listen courteously and attentively to all discussions. Focus on the business at hand. Don't interrupt. I mean, this is basic common sense. But once again, some people don't have common sense, I guess. Have great respect for the chair and always seek recognition before speaking. Going to advocacy. You don't lose your First Amendment rights by being an appointed commission member. Now, some people like to go on social media and they like to tell their whole story about their whole life. A lot of people do that, which they have a right to do that. But if you do it, make sure you don't say, well, I'm a commission member and I got appointed from Health and Human Services. And I feel this is what we should do. Remember, you're acting on social media all by yourself. You're not supposed to put out there that you're a commission member. And I guess you can for certain items, but be careful because then you get into open meeting law issues, which we will get to. Okay, I'll move on. Gifts. This might come up maybe with your commission because you might be petitioned by certain nonprofits saying, hey, can you get us some money? Not that they would do that, but if they do, be careful with that. In Arizona, $25 is the max that you can basically accept. And you probably shouldn't even be accepting that, but if you do and it's beyond that, that's technically an illegal gift, and they should not be giving that to you. And then you should probably be not be voting on their item. That's probably what should happen. And we'll get to that too. We'll talk about conflicts of interest. Meeting distractions. Once again, this is really, really simple stuff, but maybe it isn't for certain people or certain past councils. Like with personal devices, are you always up there looking at it, trying to see what the public is saying? Because maybe the public is watching this right now, or the Facebook people, and they want to say, hey, here's what we think, here's what you should do. Well, you shouldn't even have that turned on, in my opinion. And I know some people disagree with me, but you are the appointed commission member, okay? Not Facebook. So keep that in mind. And if some people, I guess some Facebook people want to be able to participate. Well, they can show up here, but the way the current policy is, that's not participation. That is not how to do it. So you shouldn't be grabbing your phone and say, oh, and by the way, Facebook post just came in. Here's what they say. You shouldn't be doing that. That's not the policy of the city yet. It might be. There are a few members that may want that, but right now that is not the policy. That is a meeting distraction. That's what that is. Influencing elections. I've had this brought to my attention or brought a question. So you're saying, Joel, because I'm a board and commission member, I can't go out there and say who I want for the city council? I said, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you can't use your influence as a commission member. So if someone asks you or you're doing some social media and you're saying, I'm a commission member and you should vote for so-and-so for mayor, that is improper. You should not be doing that. Litigants, we've had some issues with people suing the city and communication with those litigants during the litigation. I wouldn't recommend it because you could be called as a witness. and there's nothing I could do to prevent you from being deposed or being taken to trial as a witness. There's nothing I can do at that point, especially if you've already talked to the person. Attendance at meetings. I think everybody's going to come to these meetings, but if you can't come to 3 of them and you don't call the city clerk's office, because if you do call, they will make it an excused absence. But if you don't, after 3, technically, the council could say, okay, it's time for you to be replaced. Okay, incompatibility, that doesn't really come up. That's when something that you do on this commission would compromise another decision on another board if you happen to be a member of that board. That doesn't come up too often with you. It would come up with planning and zoning and board of adjustment, usually. Or if you say you wanted to be a school board member, can you be? And beyond this, appointed as a commission member? The answer is yes, because it's non-compensated and there's no proprietary or pecuniary interest. And I'll get to the conflict of interest law after this. Legal training, you're doing that now, so you're fulfilling that. And staff recommendations. Don't take staff recommendations lightly. They know what they're doing. They know when they recommend something to you, it's coming from some experience. So keep that in mind also. Any questions on code of conduct? Okay, let's move on to conflict of interest. And by the way, if you want the color copies, I can certainly get those to you. I could absolutely do that. Okay, object and purpose. The object of the conflict of interest statute is to remove or limit the possibility of personal influence which might bear upon a public official's decision. The purpose is to prevent self-dealing by public officials and public employees. The financial interests of public officials or employees must not conflict with the unbiased performance of the public duties. In other words, one cannot serve 2 masters with conflicting interests. So, what does that mean? You have a conflict of interest when you have a pecuniary or proprietary interest. That means money or property. So if you're getting something, if you have, say you were a member of the Boys and Girls Club, and you're just a member, can you vote on giving that organization money from city funds? Well, there is an exception to the general rule. First of all, is there proprietary interest? Are you going to get something out of it by giving them, by being a positive vote and then it passes? So then are they going to give you a banquet and they're going to give you, I don't know, $250? If they do that, yes, you got a conflict. There's no proprietary issue, but it's a money issue, yes. Or are you an employee of the Boys and Girls Club? Absolutely, that's a direct conflict. That's the easiest one to identify. But just being a member, I would say no, because there are exceptions to the rule. Those exceptions are on page 3. The most common exception for that situation I just described would be J. You'd be it's a class interest. So if a member of trade, business, profession, or other class of persons consisting of at least 10 or more members with which no greater interest than that of the other class members. So that means the Boys and Girls Club members, I don't know how many members they have locally, hundreds, if not over 1,000, I don't know. But that's more than 10. And if all you're doing is voting on that as a member, you can do it. Is it recommended? Probably not. Is it going to look a little odd, especially if you're on their board or you're a vocal member of that group? That might cause some Facebook discussion, to say the least. And not that that's the rule of law, but you might get an issue of, hey, how's that look? What's the appearance? Is it improper? You got to look at that too. Yes?
Yeah, because our community is, fairly small, And there are a lot of organizations that we all, either maybe volunteer for or do an event. We volunteer for an, particular event for any of these organizations. How does that, where does that fall into this?
Well, I think it goes into the class exception. There might be, and I don't know who's going to be applying in January, I have no clue, but you might be a member of all of them. And so does that exclude you? No, it doesn't, as long as there's 10 or more members of that club or group. And you can't have a proprietary interest of any kind. And if you're a board member on, say, some of those nonprofits, that's going to look really improper, especially because there's a contractual relationship. I would say if you're a board member, I would definitely not vote on the item. But there's no it might not be a legal issue, but it might be an appearance issue. And then someone's going to contact you, and they're going to complain, and then they might go to a council member, and you don't want to be involved in that, believe me. So going back to going back to the first page, it's not just you, by the way. It's also your relative. So relative is defined on page 6 under H. I'm going to read this one because this is important. Remember, it's not just you. It's anybody who, within any individual, within 2 degrees of kinship. So an individual within 2 degrees of kinship, including spouse, child, child's child, parent, grandparent, brother or sister of whole or half blood, and their spouses, and the parent, brother, sister, or child of a spouse. So the tentacles go further when you're voting on something. Because you may not have a conflict, but you might have, one of them might be a member, or they might be an employee. And if you're voting on some money that's going to go to that organization, arguably they might profit from it. So now they have a proprietary interest. So what do you do when you think, okay, is there a conflict or not? And you don't want to get in trouble. Well, you should probably come to me. And it's in the statute. It doesn't say go to Joel Stern, but it says go to the city attorney. And the city attorney can give an opinion. You would call me. I'd take down all the information. I'd apply the law to it. I'd come up with an opinion. I'd do a written opinion. It would get filed with the city clerk. And usually those are the kind that I would say you don't have a conflict of interest based on the facts. Then you could vote on it. Because you might get criticized saying, hey, you can't vote on this. Well, I have an opinion from the city attorney that says, I don't have a conflict. And it's recorded. You can go ask for it. Go get a public record request and fill it out, and you can have a copy. And then you're covered. You're good. If I'm wrong, you're still good. The decision might be void, but you're good, and you don't get in trouble. And you don't want to get in trouble because under page 2, under 5, why should anybody care? There's criminal and there's civil things that can happen to you. So I don't want that ever to happen to any of you. So if you think you have a conflict and it's that day of the vote, you just ask the chair, Madam Chair, I believe I have a conflict. I'm going to recuse myself. And you get up and leave. And I suggest you get up and leave. Don't stay in your chair. Remember, these are being recorded. And I don't know whose face Matt is centering on when the vote comes. But if you're this is apropos because, the mask thing will hopefully go away. And so they'll see how you're reacting. And you don't want to influence, you don't want to be accused of influencing the board even if you're not talking. So leave the room and then come back after it's over. That's what I suggest you do. So I think that's it for that. Any questions on conflicts of interest? Okay, open meeting law.
Joel, your voice isn't being
There we go. It turned off. Okay, it's on now. Sorry. Thank you. Hey, Matt. Wake up, Matt. How come that wasn't on?
You were on for a while.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Open meeting law. What's the public policy? Why do we have this body of law? It's a public policy that meetings of public bodies be conducted openly and that notices and agendas be provided for such meetings which contain such information as reasonably necessary to inform the public and the matters to be discussed or decided. So you take a look at your agenda, and it is detailed. Some people don't want to read the agenda because it's too detailed, but a lot of people do want to read it, and they want to know what you're doing. They're curious, and so it's good that you have everything listed. For example, this item tonight, if you had just put down legal review with city attorney, what is that? That wouldn't have worked. In fact, recently I've been giving these sessions for other commissions and boards, and they only had 2 of the 5 listed. I forget which ones it was. I think it was Code of Conduct and Open Meeting Law. So they didn't have the other 3. So I said, you got to redo your agenda if you want me to talk about all of them. I was very strict on that, and they did. So that was good. So the point of having a notice or an agenda, and we'll get to that, but you do have an agenda, it's detailed. The public needs to know what's going on while you're up there and what you're talking about. Why should you care? Once again, you've got some penalties that could happen if there's a violation of the open meeting law. When does it apply? It applies when there's a quorum present. So anytime there's a quorum present. I remember when I first started 23 years ago, I thought my night was done, and I would pass by the Village Inn going home. I'm thinking, wait, those cars look familiar. Those are the cars of the Planning and Zoning Commission members. We just had a meeting, and we had a bunch of contentious items. Well, they'd have a second meeting at the Village Inn, and they'd start talking about what just happened and maybe even a continued item. That's what I had heard from people, because the public would go and basically listen to the next meeting, and it's like, wait, they're not supposed to be meeting. So that's a quorum. In your case, you've got 5 members, so any 3 or more. So if you decide after tonight you want to go somewhere and talk about what happened or what's going to happen on December 17th, you shouldn't be doing that if you have a quorum. And if you do, then you're supposed to have a notice of the meeting. You're supposed to have an agenda. The notice is supposed to be posted legally. I'm not going to talk about executive sessions because I don't think that's going to happen too much here. But it's not just a meeting here, by the way. It's a meeting outside, which I talked about, but it's also on social media. After the meeting, if you start talking about stuff on the agenda that you want to talk about and how you're going to vote, that's a problem. That's a meeting. It's not noticed, and especially if it's a quorum or more. You are a public body because you're an appointed commission. Okay, agendas, we talked about that already. Emergency meetings, we're really not going to have that. That's not a big issue for you all. Minutes, well, you did a motion tonight to approve minutes. Okay. Do the minutes have to be verbatim? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That came up at a different commission number of years ago, and you don't have to do that. The city puts these, basically televises these or puts them out on social media. You can find them on the website. That's good enough. I mean, we still do the approval of minutes, but we don't have to do verbatim. I mean, what's better than going to the meeting and actually watching it? That's better than verbatim, I would think. Some people disagree with me, but at least the Attorney General didn't. That's all that matters. Okay, let's see, what else is I want to go there. There are some exemptions, but that's really related to e-session, so I don't need to go into that. And I think that we could move on unless you have questions. Okay, public records law. Public records and other matters in the custody of any public officer shall be open to inspection for any person at all times during business hours. The law serves to open government activity to public scrutiny. Kind of like the open meeting law, it's very similar, that everything be open. And our statute in Arizona is actually much more broad than California. California, for public records, to say somebody wants a copy of something, they give 10 days for the public entity. Ours doesn't say that. Ours says if someone wants a record of some kind, we have to do it promptly. Now, what does promptly mean? Why does the legislator say promptly? Why couldn't they just come up with a number a day? It's easier to follow, like the Freedom of Information Act. By the way, that's a separate body of law, but that's called a FOIA request. Some people always say FOIA when they really mean public records law. So the FOIA does not apply to us. It's really a Title 39 issue, which is public records law. But FOIA does talk about 10 days also. So promptly, what does that mean? Well, you go to page 2, and it tells you what these cases came out. It says, quick to act or do what is required or without delay. So if I get a public record request, or Jennifer does, she's going to send it out to affected staff and say, do you have any of these records? So say somebody wants your notes of this meeting tonight, because if you're taking notes, technically that's a public record, by the way, and you're supposed to keep those records. You're supposed to give them to Jennifer, actually, after an item is decided. So say you made your decision in some months coming up about who's going to get what, and your recommendation to council on how the allocation is going to be. And you made notes, you made handwritten notes. Okay, that's a public record. And say a nonprofit that didn't get anything, but you didn't recommend anything for a particular nonprofit. And they're mad. They want to see how you came to that conclusion. So they want to see your notes on it. They can have those. So what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to give them over to Jennifer so she can copy them off. Get them to me. I'm supposed to actually look at all these. And then I'm supposed to give them back saying, okay, this is what has to be disclosed. So it has to be done promptly. Yes?
How long do we need to keep our minutes and our agendas? You know, the ones that we take home with us. How long?
If you didn't write on them, then no, because those are duplicate. That's a duplication of what Jennifer has. But if you wrote on them, you're creating a public record by doing just the writing. Mm-hmm. So yes, and you're supposed to keep those. And I believe the retention schedule is 3 years. Is that correct? I would have to double check. Okay.
Because the retention schedule is different for every type of record, and
right.
I can't keep them all in my head.
But anyway, there's a certain amount of time, so it's just easier to give them to Jennifer, and they'll keep them, and they'll be in charge of destroying them after so much time. Because there is a list that the library, the state library of archives, mandates us, cities and towns, certain years that we're supposed to keep documents. Mm-hmm. So, who can obtain them? Anybody can. So, and they don't have to say why they want them either. And unfortunately, in this state, even if there's litigation going on with a particular entity, they can do a public records request, which I think is totally unfair. I think the legislature should change that, so that if there's litigation going on, no, you get those records through the litigation process called discovery, not through the public records request. It's harassment, number one, and it's duplicative. That's the problem. But it happens. We can charge a fee. It's 25 cents a page for non-commercial. Commercial is 50 cents a page under our code. The press, we can't charge them the commercial rate, even though they're selling whatever papers or other advertisements, whatever it is. So they're under First Amendment law, so they get the 25-cent rate. And then I gave you a whole bunch of cases that I think are fascinating, but some people don't think they're fascinating, but I do, and there's some really good fact patterns in here. So I'll let you read those all to yourself. Any questions on the public record law?
One of the things that we do when we're, trying to calculate how much money to give each organization, we have that worksheet that we work on. And so that needs to go to you then when we are done with that, correct? Because we're writing on that. And
Yeah.
That is correct.
That is.
Many people don't do that, but I've known a clerk where there has been a presentation with the flip page, the 3M flip page up, and they will collect all of them and keep them in the clerk's office because that is a public record.
Okay.
Oh, and by the way, just like the open meeting law, you might be texting something to a board member or a commission member. Guess what? That's a public record. So if you're talking about, say you're not at the meeting yet, but you're thinking about who should get what, in what percentage, and you're talking to another board member that you're friends with, that's a public record. An email, a text, even a Facebook post that is related to your duties as a commission member. There's some case law that talks about private devices. So say you have, I don't have my flip phone to show you how much of a dinosaur I am, but I do have a flip phone. But most people have some kind of Apple device or Samsung device for a phone and computer. And that's your personal, it's usually their personal device. It is for commission members. So if you're using that for commission purposes, technically, and then under a recent Attorney General position, you're supposed to save those too. And it's an honor system based on Mr. Brnovic's opinion, that you're supposed to save those because that's a public record, even if it's on your personal device. So that's supposed to take place also, and you're supposed to save those, print them out, and give them to the city clerk. So be careful what you write other commission members. It will create a lot of work for you. Like I said, there's no real penalty. It's still a honor system. Someday, though, I see some penalties if they find out. I mean, there are penalties if you violate the law, but they have to prove that you did. And sometime they might be able to do that even with personal devices. So keep that in mind also.
Joel, may I say something here? Is that we have had requests for individuals to look at city council's emails, or they want a specific subject matter from a city council email. The city attorney does go through, like if it's a, do you go through some of those personal devices, Joel? Because they're not open to the public, and your personal stuff on your personal computer is not subject to open meeting law. So I have known some attorneys to go through those emails on your personal device because the public doesn't get to see all your emails and they don't get access to your files. So Joel does a lot of work with making sure that your personal information is not seen or disclosed.
Is that redacted, you mean?
No,
that type of thing, or?
Well, personal information, they're not even going to get. So I won't even redact. I'm not even going to give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's intermingled with commission stuff, then I'll have to black it. Redacted means I basically black it out or, white it out. I don't know if there's any other colors for redactions, but those are the two colors that I know. Okay, you ready for parliamentary procedure? This one is, I don't know, probably the easiest one because it's not really a law. There's a code provision that says the city council and the board and commissions shall be guided by Robert's rules. Robert was a soldier in the 1800s, They sent him to a church meeting. He was supposed to conduct it. And it didn't go very well because there weren't any rules. So he said, I'm never going to do that again. And he created a rule book. And I think we're now on the 11th or 12th edition of Robert's Rules, 150 years later or whatever it's been. They're really meant for Congress and also social clubs. So many times the rules don't even apply to us, and it'd be impossible to apply those rules to us. So it's up to me, up to the city attorney to be the parliamentarian. So during council meetings, you might see some of that interaction that occurs, and I decide whether or not it's going to be completely followed. It's got to be done. There's a balance there, because if you really make those rules apply, or they're guides, I call it a guidance, then you'll have 5-hour meetings, because those rules are really tedious. Now, there is the rules that deal with nomination of officers. That's on page 3. Those we do follow pretty good. And so at the next meeting, you might want to be familiar with some of these things so that the order, they get a little tedious. You have to have a motion to open nominations. Then you got to get a second. Then you have to do a motion to close nominations. And then you have the vote. And then you get into what are the nominations? And you have to announce 3 times. Are there any more? Are there any more? That comes from Robert's Rules from the 1800s, because that's before they had microphones and speakers, because nobody could hear probably. That's my guess. That's why you say it 3 times. That's why the chair has to say it 3 times and ask. So it's antiquated, but we still go by this for each commission and board. So what are the goals? And I've listed them on page 1 and 2, but it's common sense stuff, once again. Decision-making is done by a majority vote. Every member has an equal right and privilege to make motions. Minority views are supposed to be heard and considered. It's supposed to be simple and direct. One question at a time. Make sure the chair has acknowledged you so that you have the floor. I've seen that many times where that's not done, and so commission and board members and council members talk over each other. Who has the floor? And so there's no control. That happens especially on contentious items when this room is filled with 50 or 60 people. That happens a lot. Motions are really easy. I listed the standard ones on page 2 and at the top of page 3. You used the continuance one pretty good today, I have to say. I think you continued 3 items. That was good. Other than that, those are the highlights, really, of all of these rules, regulations, and laws. Are there any questions? Well, if there are any, please call me direct. And I don't know if you have my information. Is that attached?
Yes.
I think there is, yes, it is.
Okay, so just call me. That's my direct line, and I will definitely get back to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
If you're an audience member, is it okay to speak?
We don't have call to the public, so
The reason I asked.
No,
I
you
wanted to ask
cannot.
about the executive sessions.
I can talk to you afterwards.
Very good.
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
And we now have time if there are any information or reports from the commission or from our staff. Okay, members. I guess just one of the things that I wanted to just, I think we're all very aware of the COVID, our status in the state of Arizona. And, you know, it seems like we are getting more. And today's cases, there were 4,123 new cases, 19 deaths, 6,384 total deaths, and our current rate now is 12%. So I think we all are aware of what we need to do, and I would like, just to remind people when you're close to others to wear your mask and to, consider the social distancing. And it looks like we may have some hope on the horizon with our immunization. So I think that's good news. Any other comments from the commission, or any other information about programs that are going on or upcoming? Okay. One of the things that the commission members, and I know with COVID we've had to cancel so many activities that normally would be going on and we would be participating in. But as we go forward throughout this coming year, hopefully we'll have the opportunity to participate in activities that the agencies that are sponsored through the Health and Human Services Commission, and even other programs within our community that help promote the health and well-being of our citizens. This commission is a commission that really reaches out to the community. So, if there are community agencies that have things going on, to let us know too. That would be helpful for us. Okay, do we have a director's report?
Staff liaison, sure. Not a report, just that we will be sending out some information to the commission. We will do a survey on our nonprofits, what their baseline budget is. We'll make some recommendations, but we'll get you some information much sooner than prior to the meeting so that you have time to read it and evaluate it and possibly come up with your own recommendations before the next agenda goes out.
Okay. And then it looks like our next meeting is December 17th at 6 p.m. here. Okay, and I think we are...
Do you want to do a motion for that?
Okay, yes, may we have a motion, or I can just say, I move that our next meeting be December 17th at 6 p.m.
Second.
Roll.
Okay, Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Kinner,
Yes.
Commissioner Erickson,
Yes.
Commissioner Bory.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, I adjourn this meeting at 7:14 p.m.